Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. My name is Jax, and welcome to the barn. This place is filled with stuff, but it got me thinking. It's filled with history in some ways. You know, I'm not one for materialistic possessions equaling value or worth, but a lot of these things have a story and a history. Some of these things actually date back to when my family emigrated from England in like the 70s. And some of it even goes further back, you know, to when we were living in England 100 years ago or something like that. And the title of this video is Your History Makes You Who You Are. Basically, I was thinking about all the stuff in here, the antiques, the random furniture, the random couches, and how all of the things, the stories and the memories really shape who you are as a human being and define you. I think, you know, we lose people in our lives, we go on crazy adventures, ridiculous things happen to us, we move around the world and the country, and we pick up things, we pick up tricks and tips, and we pick up stuff. And it got me thinking about how a huge amount of my personality and how I see the world and how I interact with the world is acquired through the people I know who raised me, the language I speak, and as someone who studied anthropology, I'm very interested in culture. I'm very interested in how people become the way they are. I've been watching a few shows recently that delve deep into psychology and personality and morality. And I've come to the conclusion that very little of it is something we're innately born with, you know? Like, I'm just naturally a morning person. I'm pretty sure that I've always been that way. And I don't really know if being a morning person is because of how I grew up, who my parents are, those kinds of things, or maybe it's like a personality thing. Maybe I was just born with it. I don't know. And who we are as people has a lot to do with the story of our lives. You guys know me. I'm a huge proponent of your life being a story. There are characters and plot lines and things that go awry in the production. You know, there are all kinds of errors or good things that happen, not because we wanted to, but because life just throws these random curveballs at us. And every human being is so unique and intricately shaped and created. And that's not a religious point of view. If you want to take it as that, by all means. But what I mean by that is we're born into this world with no ability to speak language or to understand the things around us. And it is only through growing up and being raised that we acquire a language, a culture, food preferences, how we wake up in the morning, all kinds of intricate little details. Now, some may argue, you know, your sexuality and how you act as a human being are purely genetic, and I can see some of those for sure. I think I am definitely a combination of my two parents and the DNA that goes all the way up, you know, back to the beginning of life itself. I can, you know, have a conversation with my grandfather and go, okay, I see it that way too, or those kinds of things. So there is a genetic component into this, I'm sure, but the construction of a human being is an infinitely detailed thing. I don't necessarily know if what I'm saying today in this video is going to be particularly helpful, but maybe it's just eye-opening today, so just be prepared. And the reason I say that is because does understanding that we're all uniquely individual and we are shaped by the climate we live in and the food we eat and how we develop, and you know, there is that genetic component. You know, if you're born with a specific proclivity, or you know, maybe you have a health problem that you have struggled with your whole life, Maybe you are on the autism spectrum. Hello. Um, but in the large scheme of things, we are our history. And, the saying about history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. There's a lot of these ideas that humanity is kind of forward focused, and we're kind of told that, history is okay to understand and it's fine to, get a degree in it. But at the end of the day, you have to look forward, you have to keep moving forward, you have to just keep swimming. And we kind of belittle or demean this idea that a huge part of who we are is what we have experienced. I think when you lose someone you love, that changes you. And so if it happens again, you're going to interact with it maybe similarly, but you'll have some different nuances to it. If you get cheated on, if you break up with your significant other, if you have all of these complex things in life that happen, sometimes they happen again, sometimes they don't, but they do change the way in which you interact with the world. And I think that's the biggest point that I want to get across, is that you are your history, and your history is also your future in some ways. We often talk about how we learn from failure more than we learn from success. And while I agree with that completely, I think you just learn. We innately just pick these things up. My little nephew is 17 months old, and he picks up on things with such a level of nuance that not even his parents understand what's going on, and they're just amazed and forever enthralled by everything he does. And he is very cute, so it makes sense. But as his history is being shaped in our very eyes, because he's at that age where he probably won't remember a lot of what's going on, his story and his pathway through the world is rapidly being developed. I'm always scared to move too quickly around him or something, or scare him with a teddy bear in case maybe he'll grow up to hate sharks or hate teddy bears or whatever. Because I understand that a huge part of who I am is what occurred throughout the years of 0 to 18. A huge part of who we are is shaped by our history. And I'm really starting to see that a lot with my friends and family. I tend to be a person who gets really deep very quickly. And so as it happens, I know a lot of what my friends and family have gone through in their lives. I tend to like to talk about the deep stuff and the big issues and the epic highs and lows. And so while I'm interacting with my friends and family, they say things or they do things, and my brain is reminded of what they have told me about their childhood or about their history. And it kind of clicks into place. It's like missing puzzle pieces, and it might just be my very autistic brain doing this, and maybe it doesn't have any real correlation into what is occurring. But I like to think that when I'm having a chat with my friend and he's telling me about his views on the world or politics or dating or whatever it is, that I'm also appreciating the story from before he started talking. And what I mean by that is the story of his life and what he's gone through, what he has experienced, what decisions he regrets, what he wishes he had done. And it just gives me this deeper understanding of who they are as a person and who they are striving to be by looking at who they were once, and by looking at the decisions, whether they were good or bad or morally apprehensible or whatever it might be. But by seeing what has come before, you have this far greater understanding of who they are and why they're doing the things they do. And I think one of the best guinea pigs for this, and be very careful with this, but one of the best guinea pigs for this kind of experiment you can do is your significant other. And I also caution you about this, but hopefully you know your significant other really well, and you know the story of their life, you know what has happened, the big events, the little funny stories while chatting late at night. Hopefully you have a good understanding of who this person is or was. And I think it's always so interesting to see that through their own eyes, but also having that space to understand where they are and where they've come from. understanding the family situation, where they went to school, were they the cool kid in school, were they the nerd, did they get bullied? All of these kinds of things really relay a strong message of who this person is trying to be or is avoiding being. You know, we all know there's people who are really trying to not peak in high school, and they're trying to strive to be something better, something different. Maybe you've met someone who is just the sweetest person ever, and you find out that as a kid, they were a nightmare. They were a total monster. And that can tell you a lot about their psychology and how they wish to be perceived, what they view as important in the world, how they want to go forward, how they never want to be that person again. And those are all such interesting and highly developed character traits and character personality traits. So I think just having an appreciation for someone's history or your own history in itself, maybe throughout this video you identify things about your story that really define who you are as a person now. Maybe they really define exactly what you're trying to go for. I think one of the reasons I got into social media is because I love stories and I love plot lines and history and how things develop, how they get better, how they degrade, the fall of Rome, the rise of the British Empire, whatever it might be. I'm innately curious about those things, and the idea of having my say, having my history out there is kind of interesting to me. It's this idea of documenting the development of someone navigating the world today. And I have a big appreciation for that. So those are just some tertiary thoughts about history and having a little appreciation for where you've come and where you want to go. I am very interested to know what you think. Maybe I'm totally crazy. Maybe this is just a barn rant. But in any case, I hope you're having an amazing day. And as always, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.